that's what W4 Divas does. And I, as a coach, too, and as a speaker, have to inspire people. What is one of the things that you would say is your strong suit in inspiring somebody else?
Well, I've been told that I'm an empath, and that was a new term for me. In all these years, that I think my strength is probably that I listen, that I'm genuinely present when I'm hearing the stories, which is why I can relate in the magazine and be able to share a story. If you can be empathetic without judgment and sit and hear somebody else's struggle, maybe it's not even a struggle, but to hear what their situation is, what their challenges are, and just be validation for them.
Right, which
Let
is what
them
we
feel
need to
it.
be.
Yes.
And I have to say that you are very good at that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That is
my magic.
A wonderful
that is
quality.
what I just found out this weekend.
And that is a good quality to have, because I don't think that many people have that quality. Without trying to solve anything and just listen.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I like that. That's very good. What about you, Meme?
Well, we talked about what our magic was at this retreat, but I already know that one of my gifts is to encourage people. I mean, that's just my calling. But I also like to show people a little bit of what I've been through, and then talk about where I am now, so that they can understand that if I can go through what I've gone through and be where I am now and be free and victorious and don't listen to the lies and things that I used to, then anybody can do that. And that to me is a pretty powerful picture for them to. I always lay out a little bit of my background so they know I'm not just Miss Pollyanna here, although I am quite positive. But I have had to work at having some self-esteem. Very, very, had to work hard at it, but I did it, and they can too.
Very good. Yes. It's this month is not only Breast Cancer Awareness Month, it's also Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And I just gave a talk at the Women's Center here in Bay City last week. And I very rarely tell my story because I don't like even thinking about it. Mm-hmm. But in a setting like that, I gave a little tiny bit of it. And then I told them that they could overcome too. And I talked about how to and what to expect and what you're going to go through. And I think that that's one of the things as women, and because you're an empath too, that's important. If you've heard me say this countless times, you have to give purpose to your pain. Mm-hmm. And you have to figure that the path that you're walking on for a reason. Whether you think that you chose that, there's all different ways to look at it. Whether God sent you to walk that path, whether you chose to reincarnate and walk that path, doesn't really matter. You're walking that path for a reason. And the reason why in your head, you have to figure out what it is. And once you go through a whole bunch of bad stuff, well, and things keep happening to you and you keep surviving it, then you got to figure that your reason for being here is to help other people. And I know that's how you think, Mimi, and I know that's how you think, Deb.
Right.
And it kind of validates why you have to go through all that stuff. Do you agree with that,
I absolutely agree with that. At one point, I remember doubting, going, why am I attracting this to me? With understanding the laws of attraction, but I have to agree. I think it's all of the areas that I've went through from the time I was probably 19 years old have put me on this path where I am now, where I have total confidence in myself, who I am, what I've become, and that was not always the case. Mm-hmm. I started out in an abusive relationship, and I lacked the skills to be able to maneuver through that at that time.
But you developed them.
I developed them, and probably more so than a lot of women because of those situations. they really are the reason behind my strength.
Mm-hmm.
So hang on. If you're going through something bad, there's something positive on the other end.
Right. And it does help while you're going through those things that if you journal and keep asking yourself, what am I supposed to learn from this?
Yeah.
Because I guarantee there's something, and you may not see it until it's over and you look back. But you may see it midway through, and that'll help you get over it, too. Do you agree with that, Mimi?
I do, but I also want to say that I think there's a lot of power in our stories, and so we need to be brave. It like Brene Brown has talked about, becoming vulnerable enough to share our stories, because our stories are very powerful, and a lot of times they kind of just burn inside of us until we can share them. And sometimes, like with me, it was during my sharing that I realized, oh my goodness, look how strong I was. Look how much of a problem solver I was.
Right.
I can't believe, I even told Deb this. I was sharing with her recently. I was talking with, sometimes I talk about some things that have happened in my life, and they were just bam, 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 one after another, like a period of, 4 years or whatever. And after I recount them, I'm just amazed that I made it through.
Right. I know. I'm amazed that you made it through. But you don't realize on that side of it, before all that happens, you don't realize how strong you are.
Not really.
Until you're here and you can look back and go, holy crap.
I know.
That was a boatload of
stuff. Exactly.
I agree.
And I think that in recounting our stories, I think it also empowers us.
Right.
When we tell our stories.
Right. But I'll tell you, there's parts that I do not recount because I do not want to relive them.
I understand.
And it was the first time when I was at the Women's Center, it was the first time I even slightly talked about that. I just don't talk about it. And I realize that people keep telling me I have to tell my story. I have to do it. And that's one of the things that's going to change next year. But
I think it was very brave of you.
It is going to be very gutsy of me because
it's
and
hard
although it happened a long time ago, it's still
it's painful.
Yeah.
But through that pain is how you heal. And through that pain, another woman is going to hear you that is going through that, or has a daughter going through it, or a sister going through it, and doesn't know how to help them.
Yeah. Right.
I hid.
That's why it's important.
That's what I did,
I
too.
was so ashamed that I had this abusive relationship happening. My parents told me I wasn't old enough to get married, and I said, well, I'm older than you were. And I was very defiant at that
you
stage.
Snippy.
I know. And I was dealing with a very controlling man, and I was afraid for my life and afraid for my family's life.
Mm-hmm.
So I was living day to day in fear for 6 years until I started making tiny steps. And a lot of people are very surprised to see me in the position I am now as a publisher of a magazine, producing events, running a business ad agency for over 20 years. Very, very independent, but that is what propelled me forward. Right.
Yep. And one of the examples I gave at so anyway, I talked, and it was the first time I even hinted at that. But it was women that were sitting out there that were all in abusive relationships. Right. So, I mean, if any time anybody could relate, it was them, right? Yep. And it was the first time I didn't cry.
Nice.
And I was really surprised. And when I came back and sat down, I thought to myself, wow, I didn't cry. Maybe I can do this because I don't want to cry. Anyway, there's a story that Wayne Dyer tells. And I always think of this even when you and I talk, I think about this because you go through all this stuff and it's all there. And he tells this story, and this is how I look at it now. About he was on a boat one day with some of his buddies, and he was just kind of looking, and he was watching the wake from the boat, how powerful it is. They must have been on a pretty big boat, but that is a powerful force, but it's behind you, and it's not what's pushing the boat.
Right. The
captain is deciding where the boat goes from here. This will always be there, but this guy's in charge of it. The captain's in
Nice.
charge of it.
Yep.
And I love that so much. And so every now and then, if I get down, which, you know, when you're in business for yourself, you get down sometimes. And I'll question things. And now I picture that boat. And it really helps me. And it does with life in general. If you think about all the bad things that happen, so what? Right?
Yep.
And I find that inspiring.
It's just a piece of your story.
It is. And that's all it is.
That's all it is.
Right. So if you were to say something to somebody, to a young woman that was struggling right now with self-esteem, Mimi, what would you say to inspire her to find some strength inside and to build self-esteem?
Well, just one thing. You know, I think what I would first of all encourage her to do is surround herself with people who loved her and supported her and did not criticize, but who actually helped to lift her up. And then I would say to her, ask those people who love you and care about you what your strengths are.
Oh, that's nice.
Ask them what your strengths are. Ask them your good qualities. Ask them how you've helped them. And write those things down. And then, once you have a nice little list, read that list daily.
Very nice.
And start to bolster who you are by reading the things that you really are, that people see in you that you haven't seen in yourself, and start to read it. Because I love how the brain works. And I realize that even though our brain may not agree that we are, let's say, strong, because we believe lies for so long, that we're just weak and can't do anything. But if we keep saying, I am strong, I am powerful, if we say that, our brain reframes.
Mm-hmm.
It starts to believe that this is true. And what happens is we start to build our own selves, strengthen our own selves by saying all these, because they're not lies. They're things that people have told us that they see in us as strengths. But we don't see them in ourselves. We get so on that stupid hamster wheel of lies, and that's all we see. That's all we can even operate on.
It's like we put blinders on to only see the bad in ourselves.
Exactly.
And yet we can see the good in other people.
Yes.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it?
It is. So if
That's
we start
very good. I
bolstering
like
ourselves,
that.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
Yeah.
That's what I did.
I like it. And you know, and a lot of times this goes perfectly along with when I'm coaching. If somebody tells me they're not eating right, and I ask them why, and they say I don't know, and I tell them, fake it till you make it. Start telling yourself that you eat well, that everything that you put in your mouth nourishes your body. And sure enough, it changes. And that's exactly right. That fake it till you make it is a really good saying to live by, no matter what. Just like one friend of mine said that she was broke. She had $400 to her name, and she was going to an interview for some big job. I don't remember what it was. And she went and bought herself a Coach purse. And she felt like $1 million. She didn't feel down. She didn't feel like she didn't have any money. And she went to that job interview, and she got that job interview. So since then, that's what she tells people, to buy yourself a signature purse.
I love that.
I know.
And anything else that you need to go along with it.
Right. And then buy yourself a vacation purse, a travel purse.
I love it.
Yes.
A big Buddha purse.
Yes. So if you were to give a young woman advice that was going through an abusive relationship and she didn't know how to get out of it and she wanted to, what would that advice be to her? Deb?
I would go to someone, anyone close to you, and I would at least tell one person. Share. You don't have to do it alone. You don't have to hide in shame. It is not a reflection of you. It's a reflection of him. And some people are masters at hiding who they truly are. They are not authentic while you're dating, and you don't have to be ashamed. That would be, for me, I stayed in it way too long. There are people